Hey guys, and welcome to this interview I did with Ben. Now, unfortunately, I did this interview quite a while ago and I seem to have lost some of the audio content for you guys. However, I've done my best to put it all together and just insert a black frame with some text when there is something missing, but I still managed to keep all the good points as well as the good conversation that we went through. So sit back, enjoy, and if you've got any questions or any comments, put it down below and I'll respond to you as soon as I can. Today I'm actually recording from Australia. Just spent some time up here with one of my good mates, Ben Jarris. How are you, Ben?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me on, Courtney.
No, it's a pleasure. Ben's one of the best designers I actually know.
You obviously don't know many designers.
No, I think I know quite a few. Ben actually designed the logo for one of my smaller companies, Spearpoint. Anyway, I think a lot of people listening today will find this kind of interesting because, like I said, Ben is a designer. So Ben doesn't do any of the things that I'm kind of involved in. He does a bit of marketing, but it's not your main thing.
Nothing as amazing as you, Courtney.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, so you guys know what I kind of do. Ben, we spoke about this I think a few days ago. Have you ever in your life heard of drop shipping or anything like that?
I have, look, mainly because I'm friends with you and I've heard some war stories and stuff from you about it. But yeah, it sounds like a great thing to do. I think I'd love to get into it eventually down the track. But yeah, it sounds like a really cool system, good way to make money, and great way to get into e-commerce and learn how all that works and everything.
But the main thing is it makes money over everything.
Oh, that's important too.
Yeah. All right, so kind of where me and you cross path, I guess, skill-wise, is I used to do a bit of app development. Ben's agency here, new agency, Cognitive, is actually design and app development company. Now, just so the listeners know, because I kind of know, but I want them to get a hands-on, is tell us the story of your chicken game and where that kind of went.
Okay, so I've run a number of different companies over the years. I ran an agency called Sharp, which I sold in 2011. I ran another app company called App in the Box, and we produced a series of games called Drop the Chicken. It was Drop the Chicken and Drop the Chicken 2. And
Drop the Chicken.
Yeah, look, it sounds dodgy, but yeah, we sold over 7 million copies of the game. It hit number one in 82 countries. Yeah, did great. It sat on the number one charts in Israel for about 3 years.
Okay, and
so very, very popular in Israel.
Do you think there's a reason for that? Like,
I don't know. Maybe they like dropping chickens in Israel. I'm not sure, but it was a strategy game. It was based around the ideas of like planning like the route of the chicken as they get to like a pool or whatever. It was kind of like a circus action strategy game. I guess kind of similar to games like Cut the Rope, if you ever played that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar to that. So lots of animation, lots of strategy and stuff.
Drop the Chicken came before Cut the Rope, then?
It launched 2 weeks after Cut the Rope.
Okay, because Cut the Rope was a mega hit.
Cut the Rope was a mega hit. We did pretty well, but I think we might have done really well because Cut the Rope was such a success. I think people liked it and they were maybe looking for another similar game.
Yeah.
So we just kind of hit the market at just the right time.
Okay.
But yeah, we were gutted when Cut the Rope launched because it did feel kind of similar to us. It had animated characters in it.
Yeah.
And stuff. So yeah, it was a bit sad.
That was really interesting to me though, because when I used to design apps, I would never have thought of like doing any marketing or doing any targeting in Israel. I mean, did Israel generate a lot of revenue or was it just downloads?
I mentioned that because it's just such a weird country to be successful in. Like when we did market, like we bought site skins on Pocket Gamer and Touch Arcade. So we kind of like flood the gamer market with the game when we launched.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we didn't do any direct marketing in Israel. So after we launched and we realized which countries it was successful in, we did release a couple of different versions. So we had a German version and we had an Italian version, which it was really popular in those 2 countries. So it just helped us kind of stay at the top of the charts in those countries. But yeah, Israel was a real surprise and a nice surprise.
Yeah, it's always nice. And if kind of just to dive into, I guess, your knowledge, if anyone listening has plans to launch any kind of app,
in particular a game, what kind of recommendation would you give for the starting point?
I think you need to find something that's pretty different to what's out there already. There's a lot of games that flood the market. It's also a lot of the revenue for games comes in the first couple of months, so it is really it's kind of a blast sort of way to earn money. Whereas some of the other apps, like some of the utilities or the social media apps, it's more of a long kind of slow burn. So you need to expect to put a lot of money into marketing in the early days to kind of get it out there, try and get it to the top of the charts. It's really a numbers game in terms of your position on the charts as to how much money you're going to make.
Yeah, because I know from my experience marketing with the apps is the way Apple in particular ranks the apps, you might be able to agree or disagree, is it's all about your first kind of couple of hours every day, and then your first week really, for them to decide like where you're going to sit in charts. I mean, if you launch an app and you go a couple of weeks without downloads, you've got pretty much no chance unless you come up with something completely viral.
Yeah, well, I think what we found out is that the way that Apple particularly ranks things in the lists is the algorithm seems to be based on the amount of downloads you get per hour, per day, per week, per month, and then over the whole life of the app. And then they seem to all get kind of averaged so that new apps have a chance to kind of climb the charts if they have a lot of ratings in the first few hours or first few days. And then older apps that have had consistent downloads over months and months can still stay in the charts.
Just so people kind of know where you're coming from is you had something to do with the Olympics.
So it was cool. I worked for one of my first design jobs was for a sports management company.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to work on a lot of stuff during the Sydney Olympic Games.
Okay.
So I helped out with the Australia Post stamp range during the Sydney Games and the Athens Games. I worked on the Beijing Olympic torch with the team and ended up getting handed over to Lenovo to put it all together. Done lots of cool sports related stuff too.
Okay. And what kind of year was that? It was 19...
The Sydney Olympics was the year 2000, so a while back.
Right.
Yeah, and I think Beijing was 2008 or 2004. I can't remember.
Alright, and that was, you were designing it, you designed, so that wasn't any app development side of things, that was just design?
Yeah, that was all sort of pure design, so a lot of print related stuff in my early career.
Okay, which makes pretty much. And then, I don't know how much you can kind of discuss it, but you said that you've owned a couple of previous companies of which you've all kind of sold. You did sell your app, or what happened to the app? You sold it, correct?
Yeah, we ended up selling it a few years ago.
Yeah.
So we were approached by another developer that wanted the title. I think he wanted to write out more of the same Drop the Chicken titles.
Mm-hmm.
And so he offered us a whole bunch of money to take it over. So we agreed to that.
What was that?
And,
seven-figure exit?
No, it wasn't that great.
Eight-figure exit?
But look, at the time it was still bringing in a few thousand a month. But yeah, the money that he offered, was better than us waiting around for the extra money to come through. And realistically, with the games, like I said, the bulk of the earnings is really in those first few months. So on the first day when we launched, we made just over $100,000 in that one day. And
in one day.
Yeah, and then it kind of tiered down over the next sort of few days.
Okay. And how did that one day feel? $100,000.
It was pretty good. We were sort of sitting there saying, okay, if this just holds for 2 months, we can, pay off everyone's house and all that kind of stuff.
That is true. And also, I mean, $100,000 then would be how much today?
Be like maybe 110,000 today.
Maybe. So not much difference, but at least something.
But yeah, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, and do you have any regrets around selling it or growing for any of your companies?
A little bit. I liked having control over it.
Yeah.
But for the money that we were pulling in, it was a lot to keep updating it for all the new phones and the new operating systems and things.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to go on and focus on some different things. So I think it was okay to sell.
Okay. And then a lot of people who listen to this podcast are either inspiring entrepreneurs or business owners themselves.
Yeah.
Now, that was kind of your early on career. You did a lot of entrepreneurship, kind of running your own things. If you did then transition into working for a company.
Yeah.
I don't know if Ben can say, but he ended up working for a pretty big app development company. Kind of what do you think is the biggest difference between working for someone and being the big boss?
Look, it's probably pretty similar. The so the three different companies that I've run. When you're running the company, the focus tends to be more on like sales and finances and managing the team and everything.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're working for a company, you can really specialize in one area. So, for example, like I was the global creative director at Appster for 3 years,
Okay.
and so I could really focus on design and creative direction and UX and training the team up in those particular areas and managing that team. And also, when you work for a larger company, you get access to a bigger client base.
That's true.
So you get access to some of if you work for a company that's got 400 or 500 people in it, they're usually working with more tier one sort of clients, blue chip kind of clients, and so that can be really interesting to work for that kind of stuff.
Because apps did a couple $1 million apps. So
yeah, they've done some really good stuff.
Yeah. So Ben's probably one of the better people to ask because I've never been good at working for someone. It's not me. I'm cutthroat entrepreneur. I don't like working for people. But a lot of people kind of transitioning from working for people and then trying to start their own company because Ben just opened Cognitive. Do you think that it's a good idea for 99% of the population
to work for someone else?
Yeah.
I think it's great to do when you're starting out. So it's good to do for maybe the first 5 or 10 years of your career. It's I've worked with CEOs and managers who run businesses that have never actually been an employee, so they've never had to ask for a pay rise, or they've never had to work their way up the ranks or learn some of the lower jobs, so they don't really understand what it feels like to be a secretary or to be a junior in a role.
That's interesting because I've asked a lot of people this question. I've never had the response, but I guess learning what it means to be at the lower ranks, which makes sense. But do you think kind of working for those people is any worse off than working for someone who did start at the bottom?
Yes.
Really?
I've worked with a lot of CEOs that are sort of towards the end of their careers and have had a lot of life experience. And a lot of those guys, they've had families or they've gone through a lot of life experience that really helps them relate to their employees a little bit better, and it helps them make some of the right decisions from like a humanitarian point of view. Sometimes I've seen entrepreneurs.
These are like your hardcore cutthroat.
Those that they can really. They're really focused on the bottom line, really focused on the money.
Yeah, money over.
And sometimes they don't look at the larger picture. So, for example, like there's some decisions that you make as a CEO that are kind of long-term decisions.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you're going to hire a designer, right? You can hire a really cheap designer, in Bangladesh. For really low wage.
Yeah, we're going to get into India.
That seems like a really good idea because it's only going to cost you $5,000 a year, right?
Right.
But what someone who's a bit more experienced understands is if you hire someone who's in the same culture, who's actually talented, who actually knows what they're doing, they're gonna get that project finished in a tenth of the time, and they're gonna end up saving you money, and they're also gonna end up giving you a better result. So a lot of times it's just looking at the finances, looking at the actual costs. Isn't the smartest thing to do. Sometimes you have to look at the big picture and you have to look at the long-term costs.
Okay.
And a lot of some of the younger entrepreneurs I've worked with are really focused on the short-term costs and benefits, rather than the long-term relationships with people and the long-term gains from using quality resources and things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I hear it all the time, I guess, because I am one. A lot of people seem to have this thing against millennials that they want everything tomorrow, which I guess I could understand. But if I dive into that, I am, I guess, a little bit different. I'm a huge fan of outsourcing. So I love building a system, systemizing it, get everything kind of working, and then pushing it off to, I've got a couple employees in the Philippines, in China, and I'm a huge fan of it because it's cheap, it's effective, and it just keeps the machine going. But on that, I guess the work that I kind of outsource is not something like design. It's customer service, order fulfillment, stuff that doesn't require
exactly.
as much
Like if you're running a factory and you just need someone to put stuff in boxes, you don't want to hire like the smartest scientist in the world to do that. Anyone can do it. My 5-year-old son could probably figure it out.
This is true.
So in that case, that's absolutely right. But as soon as you're hiring skilled workers, you really want to try and sit in the middle somewhere. You don't want to hire like the best of the best. It's going to be too expensive unless you can afford it. But you also don't want to hire the worst of the worst because you end up just going around in circles forever.
I know a lot of people who try and hire the best of the best, just so that they can put it up on their Instagram, on their LinkedIn, and then do you think that draws in more clients? Do you think for service businesses, clients look at who is actually doing the work, or do you think they just keep
absolutely. I think anyone that hired me and put me on their thing would definitely benefit from that. So I think that's a great idea.
That's great. Yeah, Ben knows a lot about building up his personal brand in the business world. Before I met you, like I always knew LinkedIn was a big-ish platform, but I didn't really take it seriously. That's changed a lot over the couple months, and I know you're a huge advocate for LinkedIn.
Yeah, a lot of my new work comes through LinkedIn. A lot of the referrals I get comes through LinkedIn.
Yeah,
it's a great platform. Really cool.
And do you think a lot of people use it on a day-to-day basis? Because the problem with LinkedIn is it has this stigma that people only go on it when they're looking to hire people. That's what I kind of saw. So I saw it was like a cool place for a resume and like past work. Like an online, I guess, kind of CV, but I never saw it as like I would go and scroll through the feed and like.
I don't know. I think it depends on the age demographic that you're trying to target, right? So, for example, like one of the CEOs I work with at one of the biggest companies in Victoria, he spends a lot of time going through the feed. Like every time I post something up, he writes a comment or he likes it, which means he's definitely on there looking at it and interacting with it. And I think for some of those people, like people that are directors or CEOs or people that are really interested in their careers, that LinkedIn becomes their kind of primary social app. Okay. So for example, for me, like I don't use Facebook at all. I don't use Twitter anymore. I don't use anything else. Pretty much LinkedIn's.
I don't think you even had an Instagram profile.
I don't even have an Instagram profile.
What about Snapchat? Can we go there?
I've never used Snapchat.
Yeah, Snapchat's a completely different platform from a lot of what we're talking about.
Yeah, but I mean, look, I'm 42 now, so I'm in a very different age demographic to you. So I didn't grow up with social media. So for me, something like LinkedIn, it has value because it gives me decent business value back. So if I do end up needing to go for a job or getting a recommendation, people can easily jump on LinkedIn, see my profile. Yeah. They can read recommendations. They can see what I've done in the past. And I can put stuff out that gets seen and gives value to people that I've connected with over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And that just gives me an excuse to reconnect with some of those people, and that provides business links back to me, which is great.
Yeah, that definitely works because I can say it myself is I've started using LinkedIn a little bit more aggressively the last couple weeks. I in no way have a big LinkedIn profile. I know we were saying a bit earlier that big goal, guys, if you're on LinkedIn is just get 500. You just need 500 connections because you can't tell the difference.
Anyway,
yeah. But I don't even have that yet, and I've already got a couple of people reached out to me asking if I'm available for recruitment and stuff like that. So if you guys are out there and you're looking for a job or you're looking to make money or you're unemployed or you want a salary, LinkedIn probably a good place to kind of start. And just to have as like a backdrop because that's what I use it for. It's great for networking because I don't think if you're doing B2B marketing, I don't think you're going to find people like that on Facebook, on Instagram. It's a different.
Yeah, they just don't have time to sit on those platforms.
It's a different mentality when you go onto the actual platform.
Yeah, but if you want to contact millennials that are just starting out in a new junior role at a job, then LinkedIn's maybe not the place to go. But if you want to contact CEOs and managers and marketing directors and stuff, then LinkedIn's huge.
Big fish for LinkedIn, little fish for Instagram.
Yeah. And even like for recruiting and stuff, LinkedIn's amazing. Like if you need to find people, you can really target people based on the skills, and you can see like what skills other people have said that person has. So it's a lot more legitimate way to look for people rather than just getting resumes or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's so old skilled and like old fashioned because like I'm not the biggest fan on this will actually be pretty interesting. Because I think you come from the older generation definitely went through a kind of period where university degrees meant a lot. Um, I found it interesting that on LinkedIn I have a degree in anything or I went to this university because I haven't, and yet I still got reached out for positions at certain companies, which is pretty interesting. So based on like what you're seeing, because also now with cognitive you in the startup kind of field, um, and you've worked for a lot of big companies. Do you think it's that important to say that you came from this university and you have a degree in this? And I understand that if you come from nowhere, you can't expect to get a job. But my kind of view is experience is always better than what the paper says. So do you think it's better to work in a whole lot of companies, earn nothing, and just get experience, or go to university for like 2 4 years and just what I call parroting, which is learn from a book and rewrite it in the test? What are you kind of? What's your thoughts on that?
I think there's two sides to this, right? So
Okay,
um,
you're getting deep now.
well, look, first of all, I think today it really doesn't matter what kind of degree you've got.
Right.
Like for example, I work with you because you're one of the smartest people I've ever met, right?
Okay.
And I've seen the results that you give. So you give me real value when I give you something,
Right.
and that's why I keep using you for work.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't care if
appreciate
you've
it.
got I don't care if you've got a degree. I think the fact that you're an entrepreneur, the fact that you've got that drive to go out and do that for yourself,
Right.
it means a lot more to me than the fact that you've sat through a whole bunch of lectures, or that you're the kind of guy that can go out there and actually learn himself, and that's
Okay.
really rare, and that's a precious thing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the jobs that I've gotten over the years, when we're in the interviews, they're more interested in the fact that I've run companies than that I've worked at Village Roadshow, or that I've worked for Lucasfilm or whatever. They really care about the fact that I've created a business, I can run it, I can organize people,
Yeah.
I can make money. That's a really rare skill set, and I think you're gonna learn more doing that on your own in a month than you're gonna learn 4 years at uni.
Yeah. No,
Or college.
I'm in an interesting position for this because I'm pretty grateful that I've had the ability to sit in between two generations. So I know a lot of people who have degrees and have a lot of experience working in companies, but then obviously I have a lot of mates which are my age, which would be in just your final year of schooling, kind of thinking about going there. And a lot of people kind of ask me, I think schools and universities are a waste of time, and I want to go and I'm going to make this company and I'm going to do this and do that. And I always think that yes, if you need a doctor or an accountant or anything like that, degrees are necessary because it's something that needs to be taught. You might disagree with me. I don't think entrepreneurship can be taught. I think there are always those kind of people that tend to drift more. You can see it. I mean, I had my first app when I was 11. And we kind of spoke about this earlier. But I think, there's those kids which sell baseball cards. I spoke to the other day, even there's some kids making a lot of money selling like weed and stuff. That's probably not the best business decision, but regardless, it's still trade. You can see there are always people who drift towards selling stuff and building businesses, and then there's people that just put their heads down and study hard. And I think you might agree with me that it's not a general thing that this is better than that. I think it's, as you said, it's very person to person.
Yeah, it really depends on the type of skill set you're trying to build up. So
That's true, yeah.
for example, I think it'd be a really hard place to find a course that teaches like the skills that you have. Like some of the things you do, like the the crazy Facebook Messenger stuff, and the real growth hacking craziness that you're into right now is such a new field that you're almost creating it yourself,
Yeah.
So it's not like you can go and do a growth hacking course somewhere and just learn everything. And so I think for you, that's definitely the best thing to do. But like say something like, for example, like I did a design degree a long time ago, and that at the time it felt like a waste of time. But everything that I do moving forward it comes back to some of the lessons I learned from those experts. So it is great to have a mentor or to have or to keep learning yourself the whole way through your career. It doesn't have to be uni. It can be, watching a YouTube video, listening to a podcast, reading books. Just keep trying to learn new skills and keep trying to expand on the stuff that you're in, and you'll be doing much better than paying, $60,000 for a course somewhere. And what I find is, particularly with those courses, is that you waste 3 years, and the thing that you really wanted to know took 5 minutes on one of the Tuesdays. Whereas if you go out and try and teach yourself, you can kind of cut through all the crap you already know and get straight down to the new stuff that's going to help you grow a bit better.
You've spent quite a bit of time in developing countries. And when developing, like South Africa is a developing country, and I grew up there. But you've spent some time in India and China. And even I can say that there's a big difference between kind of India and China. And South Africa. So those are your real developing countries, at least in the modern world. So do you want to tell us a little bit about coming from Australia, which is, many people call it the new world, where there's a lot of innovation going on and a lot of crazy new stuff happening. Can you kind of tell us the difference between coming from the new world innovation Australia and then going to stay in India? Because how long were you in India for?
I've probably spent about 8 months in India over the last 4 years.
Okay.
In bits. So the longest stint I did there was 4 months.
And you learned the language as well.
Yeah, and so I picked up. I wouldn't say I'm fluent in Hindi now, but I can get by.
Okay. And you've told me some really, really weird stories.
Look, it's
to our listeners.
Yeah, look, India's definitely a very different place to Australia. So the culture's really different. The people are different. The environment's different. Like the pollution there is just ridiculous. Like everyone's wearing kind of masks all the time now.
Okay.
And and it's just the level of poverty there is just incredibly lower than anything you see, in Australia or the UK, or which is disturbing.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, just so many people. It's like it's almost like a rat plague. Like everywhere you go, there's just 1,000 people standing on the corner, and it's just in India, like the whole kind of the whole economy there is built on people. So because the labor is so cheap there, like if there's a problem, instead of hiring one really good person to do it, they'll throw 100 shit people at it. So you'll see like for example, I went past a place where they sold sand.
Right.
And
I remember this.
Yeah, and the truck pulled up, and instead of like a bobcat coming out to put the sand in the back of the truck, just 100 guys came out of a little shack with bowls, and they all just like grabbed the sand in a bowl and run over to the truck and fill the truck up. And and I asked the guy like, what's going on? Like, give these guys some shovels, and they're like, we can't give them shovels because they steal the shovels. And like the apartment where I was staying, there was this lady sweeping the floor with her hand, like all out on the road and stuff. And I was like, can someone buy her a broom? What the hell? And she's like, we can't give her a broom. She steals the brooms. So, they've just got 10 people like sweeping the floor with their hands everywhere.
That must hurt, eh? Like from gym, just the bars, like I get callus on my hands, but I can imagine sweeping the floor with your hand must completely like rip the skin to shreds.
Yeah.
But
the people there, like the people that I worked with, as part of my design team and development team there, they were fantastic. Like,
okay.
You get, they're really smart people. They're really caring people, but yeah, they're typically really underpaid compared to Western workers.
Okay. Do they know that though, or do you think
they know that.
They know that. Is that awkward?
It's
being there.
Look, I don't think it's awkward, but there's always that discussion on wages. Like pretty much every conversation you have is around wages, so wages will come into it somewhere. So they're always trying to get a pay rise. A lot of particularly in India, the culture is really built up around what your role is and what your title is and how much money you're earning, as to what kind of wife you can get. So it's so for them it's really important to have, like, even if they can't get a lot of money, to have a good title. So if you can call them something special, they feel a bit better about themselves, even if they're not getting lots of money.
So that is really interesting. And this was pretty interesting for me because everyone says India and China have got millions of people and they just got poverty and it's just people. And I think a lot of people dismiss it because it's just like it's hard to picture it coming from a Western world. Because even coming from Boksburg, South Africa, and then going to London was a really big shock for me. I remember the first time I was there, just seeing just swarms of people, and that's nothing like China and India. And what I think put a lot of it into perspective for me in particular, as opposed to just thinking of people, is when you were telling me about some of the guys riding on their bicycle with like a whole lot of shit on his back or something on the street. what was the situation there?
The whole of India is like that. So there's no, I mean, there might be rules around what you can carry on your cars and your bikes, but I don't think anyone's paying attention. So it'd be like, say you'd have a motorbike and you'd have a ladder strapped across the seat and you'd have 17 members of your family all sitting on the ladder, just going down the road, or just like as much as you see on a truck here, they'd stick on the back of a bike on someone's back. Just crazy things everywhere.
And that's difficult to drive. There must be a whole
skill set around. Super dangerous. Like they call it lane driving over there. So I don't know why they call it lane driving. There's no lanes. Like everyone, it's like kind of like water moving around rocks and stuff.
Okay.
So they all just kind of go up on the sidewalks and through buildings and just everywhere they can go just to get around the traffic and things.
And a lot of traffic, I'm assuming.
Yeah, a lot of traffic and a lot of rubbish. Like they got these kind of snow plows that push the rubbish up on the side of the road, and just pigs and cows going through the rubbish. It's a pretty crazy place. I mean, look, I was working there because one of the companies I worked for had a team there, and so I was over there to train the design team.
Okay.
And one of the things I found is that they're really capable people, but they're really poorly trained in the country. So the actual courses there, the universities and the design schools and the dev schools there are pretty ordinary. So
nothing special, nothing MIT.
No, like the worst possible course you could imagine they've done. Like we had one of the ladies come out from one of the universities there to help train the team, and she spent like an hour talking about wavy lines. So it's just crazy shit. So basically, like it took me a good year to get the team I had there trained up to a level where they were as capable as the team in Melbourne.
Right.
But the problem with India is that because the wages are so low, the only way they can really make bigger wages or make a decent salary is to jump around a lot. So you'll find that people in India don't stay more than sort of 6 months to a year. So even if you do train them up, they're going to keep rotating out.
And therefore companies don't see a need to kind of invest in people.
Yeah, which is sad.
Yeah, which as hard as it sounds as a business owner, I can understand. Like, I wouldn't go and throw a lot of money investing in someone if I know in 6 months they're going to leave and go to the competitor or go to someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess there is reasoning behind that. But also, like, there's no water, and you were telling me like you have to drink bottled water and like all of that.
Yeah, don't drink the water. I've never been as sick as I was the first time I went to India. Like it's.
And China, same or different, better?
China's not quite as poor and scary.
Okay.
But still, like the workers there are treated pretty differently, and the way that companies are set up is really different. So they'll have like one manager for say 400 people, and that guy is the only person that can make a decision in the whole business.
This is the thing that you're telling me about the bathroom. Yeah.
So they'll be lining up to ask if they can go to the bathroom. There'll be like a queue like 2 hours long for the manager just to ask if they can go to the bathroom, or just crazy stuff. Like any decision at all, they're going to line up. So the manager's got an office, and there's just a massive queue of people waiting to talk to him, just to say yes or no.
It must be a hectic job, to deal with all these people all day. Like that,
Yeah,
I can see that being tiring.
And like a lot of people, like a lot of commuting, and a lot of the businesses is like way out in the country, like in the factory areas.
Yeah.
And some of those guys are saying that they travelled, maybe 6 or 7 hours to work and then back. So they
6 or 7 hours.
Like they said that there's no toilets on the trains. They had to wear nappies and stuff to get to work. So they pretty much spend their whole life on the train, which is bananas.
And then you get people like sitting at home on public healthcare in westernized countries complaining about
that's like
life's
totally
so
different.
shit. Like, puts it into perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of wages, like you look at a place like India, it is cheaper. Like for the juniors there are really cheap.
Yeah.
So you're looking at maybe 1,000 or 2,000 a year for someone that's just coming in, and then as you go up the ranks, it kind of gets a bit more like it is in Australian sort of countries. So you might be looking at about 20 or 30,000 Australian for someone senior who's managing like a big team.
Okay.
And then when you get up into the CEO sort of areas, it gets to about comparable to Western countries.
Okay, so it's not like there is no one earning high wages there. It's just
it's just the juniors are on really, really small wages. I've heard it's similar in South Africa as well. Like some of the juniors on really little wages there too.
Yeah, South Africa's got a lot of politics involved around BEE, which is like a certain percentage of staff by law have to be.
What's that, like Black Empowerment?
Yeah, it stands for Black Empowerment. Black Economic Empowerment.
Okay.
So it's like, I believe it's 40 or 50% of all employees by law have to be black.
Really?
Yeah, and it's the same thing that in big companies, if your turnover is over a certain amount, half the company has to be owned by a black person. Otherwise, your tax is a lot higher and you get penalties. So I think that kind of displaces a lot of things because companies generally scrabble around to try and get employees like that who are black, because then they get lower tax rates, and then that causes a whole lot of other issues. But the same thing, I guess, occurs in South Africa. There's a lot of interruptions in education in universities, a lot of strikes and burning and then destruction. So it's a very different system than what you observe in Australia and stuff, because the government doesn't have as much influence. Like here in Australia, it's interesting that you can, if you've got an idea for an app or something, you can go and pitch it and get government funding.
Yeah.
Not the same thing there. I don't think India and China, maybe China, I don't think India does the same.
Maybe.
So that's interesting, but China and India also have, I know, issues with suicide. It's a pretty big problem there. Did you kind of see that as an issue?
I didn't see any suicide. I felt like killing myself a few times.
Okay.
But
yeah.
No, I didn't. I mean, I've heard stories too about like the stuff that happened at Apple and all that, and jumping off the roof, and they installed nets.
Yeah, this is pretty creative.
It's horrible.
Well, I mean, what else are you supposed to do? Like, if people are jumping off roofs, it's like, put up some nets.
Look, I think the thing is, like, when I saw things really working well in India and China, in India in particular, is where we paid people kind of decent rates that were still super cheap compared to Australia. So, if someone was on $4,000 a year Australian, we'd give them a pay raise up to 8 or 10. And they'd be super wrapped, and we'd hold them there for 2 or 3 years at least, and then we'd at least get good value out of them. Now, like $10,000 Australian is not much to have. It's like a third of the minimum wage in Australia, So it's still ridiculously cheap. But like for the person living in India, that's a life-changing thing for them. That's something that really helps them. It helps them kind of get on their feet, helps them have a stable job.
Right.
It helps them to be happy about what they're doing because they're getting paid okay for it. So I think if you are going to move into those countries, look at what the wages are and maybe just pay a little bit more, because you're going to get more value out of having people long term than you are by trying to mix and match people every 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends what you're doing. If you just, like I said, if you're just packing boxes or whatever,
then you just need
to get the cheapest you can possibly get.
Put a machine. That's my kind of thing. Automation.
Yeah, but a lot of people use Indian resources just for the grunt work. So they'll have people here doing the high-end thinking stuff, and they'll have the grunt work done over there. And I think you can give those guys a little bit more value than that. They're actually pretty smart.
Okay, that's interesting. And then kind of the last thing I have, just to wrap this up, is you are extremely involved in the design app development field.
Extremely involved, yes.
Right. Now, I'm involved a lot in kind of the tides of the actual market, like trends and where the market is going, just because I sell a lot of products which are trend related, and then with marketing, it's always, what is kind of the new thing to do that draws attention.
Yeah.
So a lot of, pretty much every business that I actually run is fighting for attention. It's just attention. Now, a lot of people I know who have a lot more experience than me and a much bigger background say the same thing, but they all agree that VR and voice is going to become the next YouTube, the next internet. Alexa, Google Assistant, and Siri are dramatically gaining market share, and they're just taking everything. Now, voice requires no design. I'm kind of safe because there might be some marketing there, but voice has got no design and it's got no apps development going on there. So if that is predicted to take place in the next 5-10 years, how big of a threat do you think that is to design agencies like Cognitive?
Okay, so first, I think I disagree with you and say that voice doesn't have any design in it. I think it absolutely does.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of user experience design involved in figuring out how to make those voice applications actually work and flow, and when you ask things, how you ask things, what kind of flow you ask things and get information back, how you actually build the AIs in to respond correctly and things. A lot of that is design driven, and a lot of the work we do now, is around things like content and maximizing content flows and content. Just the nature of the content and things within the designs and within the UX of a product. And I think that's exactly the same with voice. I think in terms of VR, I don't think VR is going to become that big. I think it's a bit of a lost cause. It's kind of it might be good in gaming. It might get better, but I think AR, like augmented reality, is really the next step.
But that leads to VR. AR is kind of the stepping stone between life.
They're very,
and VR.
very similar, but I think AR is something that could become more mainstream, something that people could maybe wear all day as they're moving around. And I think that provides more of an avenue for marketers and businesses, to actually take advantage of that technology. VR is something very kind of stuck inside its own app or its own environment. So you might be playing a game, or you might be watching a movie, or you might be doing something. Yeah. Whereas AR is sort of very based in the environment. So you might be walking around and you can actually see the new watch on your arm, or you can get information about things while you're moving around, and I think that has a lot more opportunities.
Yeah, that's true, because I will say, like, a lot of people, I know Facebook in particular is really trying to push their Oculus. That brings up another thing that I know because I'm involved, but I think a listener who just does entrepreneurship would have missed that. But what Ben kind of said there is design. When people think of design, they generally think of drawing things, kind of the visual aspects. But design, as you said there, a big portion of design in the current world is like the user interface, which is it's pretty much like a mind map of like step 1, step 2, step 3 of how people use things. And a lot of people, I don't think they understand that falls under the heading of design. But it's safe to say that you agree with me that drawing pictures and stuff is drawing turbos.
Well, I mean, look, I think the same thing happened when computers came out and the internet came out. Everyone's like, no one's ever going to read a book anymore or a magazine, and they're definitely struggling now, but they don't totally disappear. And I think it just evolves into something else. People always need things designed, and they need things to look right, and they need to interact with things. The more new technology comes out, the more opportunities there are for interface design and design. Like, for example, one of the projects that I'm working on now is like an app. It's like a new headset to assist the blind. So if they've got say they've got a seeing eye dog, they can wear this to actually give them directions. They can do facial recognition. It's got machine learning to help them identify things like doorknobs and read signs and text. That's got absolutely no user interface at all because it's for the blind.
Right.
But it still requires a lot of design to figure out how all of those components are going to work, how they're going to interact with it, how they're going to control the different features. And that's very much what you're talking about in terms of voice and everything. So I think you're right that maybe UI design might not be as big a thing in the future, but I think that user experience design, product design, and I think that's going to disappear anytime soon. It's just going to change.
Yeah, and I guess that's things with most markets is everything kind of evolves and goes to the next step. But yeah, that's definitely something to think about. So Ben, thanks for coming on the episode.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks for having me on.